the sad part of the game that we need to talk about, Thatcher Demko. Thatcher Demko goes down. Farhan Lalji was the one that reported that Demko will be out for 2 to 3 weeks. Rick Tocchet said post-game that he didn't think the injury was too serious. Rick Dhaliwal confirming that it is the knee for Thatcher Demko. Also a lot of reporting from Dhaliwal and Farhan that it is not one of the injuries that has plagued Demko in the past. Obviously, we know he's had hip issues. He's had the groin, obviously, last year, and he's had knee. I wonder if it's the other knee or if it's just a different part of his knee. I don't know how many parts of the knee there are. Feels like you could hurt a bunch of them. But 2 to 3 weeks for Thatcher Demko. That's going to hurt them. But the one thing I will say, Harm, is if this team defends the way that they have in front of Demko for the past few games, and DeSmith got to start too. If they defend the way they are right now and keep playing the way they are in front of their goaltender, look, I know Demko's had to make some timely saves. If they play like this, they'll be fine over this stretch. If it is just 2 to 3 weeks, they'll be fine. They'll have, you'd assume, a pretty well-rested Thatcher Demko heading into the playoffs. And again, I don't want to speculate too much on what it could mean for him. But yeah, you would think that you have a pretty well-rested Thatcher Demko ready to go for the playoffs.
Definitely. And what stands out in terms of why they've improved defensively is just there's no space in the neutral zone. If you're the opposition in the Jets game, for example, it seemed like every time the Jets were trying to transition the puck up the ice, that there was so much back pressure from the forwards to angle them to the outside, to force them to make a quicker decision to dump it in, as opposed to having the time to actually carry it in with control and make a dangerous play off the rush. And now that the Canucks are back at home, now that they don't have many games on the schedule in terms of they've got a spaced out run here over this next week, they're going to hopefully be well rested to continue playing that style, because it is taxing. It does require a lot of energy to be busting your tail on every shift, on every back check, while also being mindful of trying to create offense as a forward. But if they can continue defending the neutral zone as well as they have, I think that'll go a long way in making sure that DeSmith's workload isn't too onerous. And I'll also say this: it's massive that DeSmith, for his own confidence, was able to pick up the victory against Anaheim.
Yeah, the shutout won't go on his record as a shutout, but it'll be a shutout in our hearts.
In Anaheim.
Excuse me. I thought you meant the final one, because that's also big.
That was crucial, I think, for his confidence as well. But I mean, you could just see in Anaheim, once DeSmith was speaking in the scrum, how much relief was on his face. That, okay, like I've been struggling. I've been allowing a lot of goals. I finally picked up a win. And Rick Tocchet also made the distinction that he thinks it's important that DeSmith picked up the win in that Anaheim game in a tight, high-pressure 2-1 game, as opposed to a game where they just beat up the Ducks like 6-0 and there was no pressure on him, right?
Yeah. All right, people are asking in chat about Silovs or Tolopilo coming up. You ready for me to monologue? You have some time to drink some water. All right, so I was trying to answer this question of, will the Canucks call up Nikita Tolopilo or prize possession Arturs Silovs? Tolopilo is also a prize possession, we should say, for Ian Clark and the Canucks coaching staff. But I'm looking at this and I'm trying to figure out who should get the call. And I know everybody wants a concrete answer. They want me to come out and say it's Arturs Silovs. It's my boy Arturs Silovs. As I said, second best player in the world behind Connor Bedard, according to the IIHF last year. Obviously, he picks up MVP with Latvia. He's a good goaltender. And look, I've praised Arturs Silovs a lot on this show. But there's a but here, Harm. Nikita Tolopilo's had a really strong season down in Abbotsford. This is a guy that Canucks went out and got in the offseason. I know they're very excited about him. This is a guy that led the Allsvenskan last year in save percentage. He's up to a 907 this year. You'll also look and see that Arturs Silovs, I believe, I should have looked it up.
He's also 907.
907, yeah, good thing you looked it up. See, even for the stuff that I sound well prepared on, I'm not actually that well prepared. But I can tell you that Arturs Silovs, again, is somebody that this coaching staff really believes in. And when I say coaching staff, I mean Marco Terenius, the goalie coach out in Abbotsford, and I mean Ian Clark. Silovs got the games at the end of last season. I thought he was really good in those games. Obviously, he had the one against the New York Rangers where I thought he really took a step in terms of learning the speed of the game. Mika Zibanejad kind of tricked him a little bit, knowing it was an AHL goaltender in net. Some huge strides for Silovs at the end of last season. He has the NHL experience. So if you're looking at it and saying, okay, these goaltenders are, one of them is going to come up, they're probably going to have to start. I don't think if Demko's out 2 to 3 weeks, you're not starting Casey DeSmith for all of those games. You're not. These guys are going to play. One of them is going to play. And what we're trying to answer is if it's going to be Silovs or if it's going to be Tolopilo. Silovs had a great season last year, 909 save percentage in the AHL, played well at the NHL level as well. However, Nikita Tolopilo has come in this year. Silovs was kind of penciled in as the starter, the 1A, if you want to call it a 1A, 1B situation. And I would say, especially in 2024, in terms of their deployment and how they've played in 2024, I would say that Tolopilo has been the better goaltender. And I think what really stands out is how the goals are going in. I know they have identical 907 save percentages, but what's going to matter more, I think, to Ian Clark when he's, when him and the coaching staff are trying to make this decision, what's going to stand out more is how the goals are going in. For Arturs Silovs, the goals haven't all been these east-west, that's one that he just can't have. That's an impossible save to make, or that's a very difficult save to make. A lot of the goals Arturs Silovs let in this season, as much as it pains me to say it, a lot of them have been those, would like to have that one back. Or those stinkers. Hell, there was that one from center ice, that game-losing stinker from center ice that we wrote about at Canucks Army. That was in last week's Blackfish report, the updated version of which will be out tomorrow, Tuesday, on Canucks Army. But should it be Silovs? Should it be Tolopilo? That is the question. I don't want to sound like I'm talking in circles too much, but I'm going to say that at first I thought Silovs because, hey, he's got NHL experience, but now I'm thinking it might be Tolopilo, solely based on how he's played this year, and that this coaching staff might want to kind of reward him for playing so well down in Abbotsford. That being said, you're looking for wins. You're not looking for a feel-good story. You're not looking for a guy to get his feet wet the way you were last year when Silovs got the shot. Remember, when Silovs got the shot, Spencer Martin and Colin Delia were both still up here. Now, I know that's not the most, the hardest competition, especially how those two played at the tail end of last year, but you didn't have to get Silovs in those games. And I would say if the Canucks were fighting for a playoff spot, they wouldn't have got Silovs into those games, but they did. Silovs got his feet wet. Now he has wet feet. I'm wondering if he gets into a game here or if it's Tolopilo. And again, there's a lot of different factors. I'm really curious. I don't know the answer is the short answer. Again, people want me to come out and say, it's going to be this guy. It's going to be this guy. If I was calling the shots, which I'm not, I think I would go with Silovs because I believe in Silovs. And I think the NHL experience trumps playing well in the AHL this season. And I know Silovs has had a really up and down year, but he has had his ups this year. You don't get to a 907 save percentage if you haven't had your ups. It's just that he's had lower lows than Nikita Tolopilo. So I'm very curious who they give the NHL shot to. Might be Tolopilo, might be Silovs. Almost impossible to know for sure.
I'd lean towards Silovs as well. Like you said, I think the NHL experience matters a little bit just because there is always a little bit of a learning curve when a minor league goaltender first comes up to the NHL. I will say this about Silovs. It is interesting, big picture to note. And of course, this isn't necessarily in relation to the decision the Canucks have to make now, but he goes through these stretches where he'll have really high highs and really low lows.
Yeah.
Right. Like he'll go on an absolute heater like he did in the World Championships for Latvia, or at certain points in the AHL where he'll reel off like multiple shutouts in a couple weeks stretch, and he'll have like an 8-game stretch where he has a 930 save percentage or something. But then it'll also be counteracted by stretches where it feels like he's allowing a lot of soft goals. And I think that's going to be an important part, is sort of assessing his recent form. Where's his confidence at? Where is he at mentally in terms of, is he ready for an NHL opportunity? And if it doesn't go well, is he in a position where he's going to be able to shake that off? Because let's not forget, when Silovs first got the opportunity to come up and play these NHL games, going up against a high octane Rangers offense, a lot of us were thinking, he's played okay in the American League, but his numbers weren't spectacular.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, they weren't great in the AHL last season. And a lot of us, myself included, were thinking, is he ready for this moment? What if he gets shellacked and it hinders his confidence? But because the Canucks and Ryan Johnson knew his, psyche really well, we're working so closely with him, they made the determination that, hey, this is a guy who seems mentally ready for this moment. And we don't think this is as much a risk as people on the outside do. And guess what? It ended up working out.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to keep in mind is this management group, this coaching staff, they're going to know where each goaltender is at and what that, NHL experience, NHL pressure, what that NHL test could mean for each of them.
And the guys that cover the Abbotsford Canucks for Canucks Army and elsewhere, Dave Hall is echoing what you said, Quads. He says, I've been turned into a Nikita Tolopilo truther. I love his calm approach to the game, and I think there is real potential. With that said, Arturs Silovs is next in line and on an expiring contract. They should be testing him as much as possible. Likely won't see any games anyways. And Ben Lipka, who covers Abby as well, says, I'm thinking they may give Tolopilo a look. He's signed for next season. Silovs isn't yet. Tolopilo has been more consistent this season in Abbotsford. And I believe Cody Severson, apologies, Cody, is echoing something similar in our YouTube live chat. So the guys that are covering this team day in, day out are kind of all leaning towards Tolopilo. But, I think the fact that they've already gone to Silovs and Ian Clark has talked so highly at him times, my guess is they're probably going to go with that. But, I think Canucks fans should be prepared. They shouldn't be surprised to see if Tolopilo gets the call, because he's right from get-go, like at Young Stars, he was noticeable. And I know that's prospects, but coming over, he's played, a considerable amount of pro hockey already, just like Silovs has. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see here because, calling them up is one thing, but do they actually get, significant amount of ice time? Probably not.
Yeah.
But regardless, you get the chance to take on pro shooters in practice. You get to work one-on-one with Ian Clark. So all those little things kind of go a long way for a goaltender's development, just getting the confidence and just, getting that chance to wear that Vancouver Canucks jersey in practice at the very least, and then perhaps as a backup for a game.
Yeah. So I was talking to Cody, the daddy of the Farmies. We were talking about the call up, who is it going to be, all that sort of stuff. And something that Cody pointed out to me that really made me think was, just a reminder that one, Casey DeSmith is a UFA after this year. He's not signed beyond this season. And that heading into this season, the Canucks seem to at least be hoping that Silovs was going to be able to be the backup. And let's not forget the conversations we were having ahead of training camp, folks, before Casey DeSmith came to Vancouver was, it's going to be Silovs. I don't think Spencer Martin's going to be the goalie. Like that was the take that we were throwing out, or at least I was throwing out, was, Silovs is probably going to be the backup. I think the organization looked at it, clocked that Silovs maybe wasn't ready to do that. What's the organization's opinion if Silovs isn't ready to do that next season? That's where I'm at now. So I'm looking at it and saying they might be looking at this and thinking to themselves, okay, well, we need to figure out what we have in Tolopilo because maybe we want Tolopilo to be our backup, or we're once again going to have to add going out and getting a proper 1B goaltender like Casey DeSmith has been for Thatcher Demko. We're going to have to add that to our offseason shopping list. And guess what? We're going to have to add that to our salary cap.
Yeah, and honestly, I think this would have been a higher pressure decision or higher stakes if DeSmith had continued his form from, let's say, the first half of the season where he was brilliant. And look, if DeSmith was still rocking like a 915 or a 917 save percentage, then I think a lot of us would have been wondering, okay, is the demand for him in free agency going to be such that he's going to price himself out of Vancouver? Whereas now with this with the slump that he's been on, DeSmith is at a point where, hey, either him or a comparable backup, you're not going to have to pay a lot for that type of piece. So you can afford, if necessary, to give Silovs another year in Abbotsford to develop. Sorry, there's just a lot happening.
What is going on?
Sorry, guys. I'm doing some studio renovations right now.
Got the 2x4s out. What is going? Can
they're
you hear
painting? For those that are unaware of this, they're painting at the wall center
with
here.
what?
Some hammers,
Yeah,
apparently.
like, what the hell? Are they covering
Can
hammers?
people
with
hear that?
paint? That's what I'm trying to figure out. If people can actually hear it, or
They
if we're
have to be able to. There's no way.
okay, let's
It's way
be
too
quiet for
loud.
a sec. Literally on cue, he gets louder. Whoever's banging right now.
Let me go investigate.
Yeah, we'll try and get to the bottom of that. But we'll keep talking through.
I tried to keep a straight face.
I
and just
couldn't at the end. My feet are vibrating. Like the whole room is shaking. They're painting. Yeah, they're painting. Okay. We'll see. We'll just get to the bottom of that. People said they couldn't hear it while we were talking. So let's just talk through it, Harm. I got to get it together. Okay. I got to get it together here. Okay, so ultimately, yeah, I'm looking at Silovs versus Tolopilo, trying to figure out who it's going to be. And I don't know the answer. Like, I wish I knew an answer. I wish I could come tell you that I know exactly who it's going to be. I don't know the answer just yet. But we'll see. Canucks practice tomorrow. They had 2 well-deserved days off on Sunday, on Monday. They are going to be back practicing tomorrow. And then the Colorado Avalanche are in town for a game on Wednesday night. Obviously, Casey DeSmith will get the start for that one. But we will see at practice who the other goaltender is, who the Canucks choose to call up.
I'll also say this. I think when you look at the sort of meaning of these games down the stretch, it's these aren't high stakes games nearly as much as I thought they may have been even a month ago, because we had this conversation of, okay, the importance of finishing first in the West, so you get to play the second wildcard team. Well, and we were hoping, okay, could that second wildcard team be Nashville? Well, Nashville's 8-0-2.
Yeah.
They're in the first wildcard spot ahead of Vegas. They're 3 points up on them. So you don't know who's going to finish in the first wildcard spot, who's going to finish in the second wildcard spot between Nashville, Vegas, or even if it's in LA in that conversation. So at this point, the value of finishing first in the West, it's not like I'm sitting here and going, oh boy, it's a catastrophic scenario if the Canucks finish second in the West instead of first. The main thing is just winning the division. And from that standpoint, the Canucks are still 10 points up on the Edmonton Oilers. So you're pretty safe in that respect. So that's at least a good spot for the Canucks to be in, where they've banked so many points that it doesn't feel like every game is a do or die. And that's why it's important that even on this road trip that they got back on a 4-game winning streak to steady the ship. Because can you imagine if the Canucks were in a situation where they had lost some of those games on the road, and then you think back to how tough the end of February was for them in terms of how many games they were losing. Imagine they were still in this losing rut.
Yes.
And then you lose Thatcher Demko. Now we're having a totally different conversation. Yes. People are panicking now because this team is defending well, because they've won games, because first place in the Pacific Division is relatively secure. The panic button, people aren't rushing to smash it.
Corey Anderson in the chat. That's some very rhythmic painting going on behind us. It stopped now. It stopped. Grady went and laid the smack down. He used their paintbrushes against them there. Okay. What did I have here? I had a few things. Okay, so you brought up the wild card. I find this very interesting. Obviously, Edmonton, like you said, 10 points behind, 3 games in hand, but people in the live chat were also pointing out that the Oilers have a pretty tough schedule coming up. And, when you look at the Canucks' lack of travel, and look, let's be honest here, I don't think it's a coincidence that the Canucks look well rested right now, and all of a sudden they're starting to look like they did back in like October when they were just running down every team that they faced. Again, you're not getting too cocky here, but they are on a 4-game win streak, and they have another real test game against the Colorado Avalanche, and they're going to be well rested for that. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.